Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Yield Today with Dow and Canlin, where self care is super important. We are very open about talking about self care and just improving our self care as we build businesses, as we try to make the world a better place, as we pursue our dreams and missions. So, if you're into that, definitely follow the podcast for more. Today, we're going to be talking about my goals for 2021 with the podcast, how those are going, and kind of diving deep into things and seeing where we can improve and where we may have been lying to ourselves, where we can push forward, where we may need to hold back, all that and more. Let's jump into it. So, one of my goals for 2021 with the podcast was to reach 20,000 downloads by the end of the year. Right now, we're at around 2,500. So, we've been getting like more downloads on a monthly basis than usual, but still definitely not on pace to hit that 20K. And so there's some things we need to change for that to happen, obviously. And I had three goals, three different, I guess, objectives that would help me with reaching that goal. And so number one was to be more open with my community, do more stuff on Instagram, make more stuff that encourages your participation. I made a I made a little questionnaire a little bit ago and I got a couple of new podcast episodes from that, from the responses for that. And if you would like to take that, it's just like a quick quiz that just answers some questions of what you think of the podcast so far and ways it can be improved. I'll have a link to that in the show notes of this episode. And yeah, so along with that, I think one reason why I haven't done this more is lately my laptop has been on the fritz. It's been doing really poorly at doing anything besides browsing the internet and uploading podcast episodes. Like doing schoolwork, it's been really bad. And so I've had to pivot. And honestly, school's been a bit of a struggle. And so I've had to prioritize that more than going deeper onto podcast stuff. But next semester, I'm planning on really going all in and just planning it out better and setting aside time. And so I'm really excited for that. And there's a lot of humbling lessons from this semester. And I'll make another episode about that because there was definitely a lot to learn. Get my brand out there. Uh, One of my other objectives was more clarity with my brand. And I think we have achieved that, which has been very exciting. There was one day earlier this semester when I just woke up and I just kind of hit me like everything that I've been doing, it's all so people can have a better relationship with themselves and grow and kind of be able to see themselves in a better light, right? Like that's a lot of what when I'm doing things, a lot of it comes back to that is so you'll treat yourself better, you'll think of yourself a little bit differently, you'll think of your work differently. And so it all does kind of come back to this self-care, your relationship with yourself. So I've been kind of doubling down on that. I don't know if you've noticed, but that's what I've been trying to do. And it's interesting because I've had to change up, like I've had to kind of it's been a pivot. And so I've had to it's been an interesting pivot. And so I've been focusing more on that. And so I've been focusing more on that. And although we are not quite at that point where so my interviews are going to be changing up pretty soon. Not like a ton because I love talking about that stuff anyway, but there's going to be a little bit more of a focus on that. And so I would say overall my brand is like getting more consistent across the board, focusing on the self-care piece. I've just been struggling with making the full transition. And so that's definitely something I'll be doing soon because once I have that greater clarity, people can get behind the vision more. Like I know yield is an acronym and that's kind of rough for people, but I think the message is going to get more powerfully across over time. That's the hope anyway. Yes, I envision love demonstrated, right? So there's this really interesting like scripture that comes to mind, and it basically says like, who will follow an uncertain voice into battle? And it's so true. Like if you don't really know like what you're doing, like if you can't narrow it down to like one thing, it's going to be really difficult. And I don't mean like just, I just mean like in the moment. Like if you're struggling, like should I, do my homework or should I make some pasta or something? You need to be able to narrow it down what you're going to do in that moment so you can go all in with it and take that thing down, right? Maybe that didn't make much sense. But for me, this scripture has been helpful because if you're like, yeah, I'm going to go this way. Nope, just kidding, I'm going to go that way. It's like, well, which way do you want us to go? It gets a little confusing. And so I feel like my podcast has been a little bit confusing in the messaging at times. So I'm really trying to just focus on that self care piece, the human aspect. Because for me, starting little side hustles and stuff like that and trying out other things, it's helped me to build my relationship with myself. I've had to set myself to a higher standard, and it's helped me to set higher goals and whatnot. And so it's been a big blessing. It's also, kind of hurt me at some points. And those are also conversations I'm interested in having with entrepreneurs and also with myself. And I share a lot of those on this podcast. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a work in progress. And the wonderful thing is that we are kind of, checking in with ourselves. And so we can push forward from this point onward. I'm really thankful for the support that the podcast has been getting recently. It really is humbling. I just really wanted to like reach more people and whatnot. And that goes along with the final objective to help us reach that 20,000 download mark. And that is just providing more value and giving more, like making ebooks, things like that. And I've really been trying to get better at this, and I have these ideas, but it's just getting them on paper and getting started with them and just kind of deciding like what's worth the most to me, right? And so I feel like I'm going to be trying to like connect with entrepreneurs, kind of talk with them about some of my ideas, and so we can kind of get the ball rolling in these things. But I really want to write some solid ebooks about self-care, just about looking at life differently and being able to bounce back. Because for me, like, I have the most joy from being able to share all these things that I'm learning and knowing that there's the potential it could help out somebody. That just brings me a whole lot of joy. And so here in Q2, I'm planning on getting out my first book that's really more of a passion project that's about habits. So I'm going to get that out, and hopefully that will be before the end of the semester because I've just been sitting on it and it's like done. I just have to do like one last effort really to get that out. So I'm planning to get that out, appear on a bunch of podcasts. We'll say like 20 podcasts, right? To like get that book out there, and I'll also be sharing the podcast and stuff. I think just I think really going out of my way to reach out to different people that listen to the podcast, getting them on the show, anything like that, just trying out different things, getting feedback so I can iterate and so this podcast can move forward quicker and be able to help people faster too because it resonates. That's what I really want. And so those are my goals here in Q2. Obviously, I have all my personal goals as well, which are slightly different. Maybe I can share those in another episode if you'd be interested. But yeah, that's where we're sitting right now. I feel like we're in a pretty good spot. We just have to kind of pick up the pace now. If you think of this as like 2021 as like a 4-lap race, we finished the first lap and now we need to pick up the pace a little bit. Maybe think about not pizza or think about something that's going to help us push forward. Because I think on that first lap, I was just maybe sometimes not super focused. And talking with people and learning from people really helped me out with that. I've been reading a... So yeah, that's the plan. That's the game plan. We're going to do it. We're going to make that happen. And there's going to be more podcast episodes coming to you very soon, Monday and Thursday. I will apologize real fast, though. Lately, because my internet because my I do need to apologize real fast though, because my laptop has been really dumb and I just haven't had the patience. I haven't done any interviews because I've just been stressed that Zoom will close and I've just been stressed about setting it up, and especially with school. So for the time being, there won't be any interviews, and I'm planning on opening interviews. I'm planning on doing interviews. 95, 96. I'm planning to get a couple interviews done before. I'm not quite sure when they'll be returning, but when they do return, they'll be coming back with a real bang because I'll have a better computer and a better setup, and these YouTube videos will look better, and it'll just be better. But it's one of those things, we just have to be patient here in this time of uncertainty and everything. So that's kind of the game plan. This is kind of an all over the place episode. The next episode, I'm going to be sharing 3 different stories I'd tell myself if I was starting a side hustle or starting a podcast, all those things. If I was starting that again today, 3 stories I would tell myself. So definitely check out that episode if it is something you are interested in. And thank you so much. I am on Instagram at DreamChaserDallin or at Yield to Dave Dallin Podcast. Either of those will work just fine. And all those links. As always, if you'd like to provide some feedback, iTunes reviews are amazing. And as always, if you'd like to provide some feedback, As always, if you'd like to review the podcast, as always, thank you so much for listening. Definitely leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can reach out at Yield Today with Dallin Podcast on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever. I'm glad to talk with you, and I'd love to get to know you better. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to yield today, and it will be a better tomorrow.